tape on it. There he is. Larry, what's up, man?
Howdy do. Nice to see you and to
Larry,
hear
yeah,
you, and for you to hear me.
yeah, that's what it's all about, hearing one another. And I'm going to tell you, I'm so familiar with the great work that you all have been doing over so many years. I've been over at the Southwest Improvement Council, and it's like this cul-de-sac that works, and then there's like the building, and so I'm very familiar with everything that you all have been up to over many years. We've had partnerships between, what you're doing in Brother Jeff's Cultural Center over time. And what I like to do is let the free thinkers know that we have Larry Ambrose from the Southwest Improvement Council in the Free Think Zone. I'm going to hit you all with this trigger alert, and then we're going to have a conversation about something that's very troubling to me as it relates to, the shifting dynamics of what I call the mile high income city. This is a show that triggers people because you've entered a free think zone. If you're not willing to be exposed to other points of view, tune out now and don't read the comments. You have been warned. Larry, let's just jump right into it. Can you give me a little background of the Southwest Improvement Council? Like, when was it formed? What's your mission? And then I want to have a conversation from there.
So, Southwest Improvement Council was formed in 1987 by Jan Marie Bell. She was the founder, and originally she was located on Alameda Avenue. The idea was to form a nonprofit that would help bring the community up without displacement, just to help generally benefit the community and to do programs. Was originally part of what was called the Model Cities program through the city and county of Denver. And then there was a community center here at 1000 South Lowell that was originally started by a Methodist church. It started in 1957. Several nonprofits had tried to run it. Jan came in 1988 and took over the building. The city had actually been given the building by the Methodist Church in the early 80s. But nobody had been successful in running it to the point to where it could pay its own bills. So when SWIC took over in 1988, we were the first organization to maintain and be able to pay the bills on an ongoing basis. And during the 1990s, the emphasis was on just basically housekeeping in the neighborhood, trying to get grants to help people with trash pickup and with graffiti and things like that. Eventually, we kind of gravitated towards helping senior citizens, and also in terms of affordable housing. We early on started to acquire property, to fix it up, and then to resell it at a very low profit to people so they'd have affordable housing. We started acquiring affordable housing, and we own about 19 units right now. We also got into the housing counseling business. There were several periods of economic downturn when people were in danger of foreclosure, when SWIC played an instrumental role in keeping people in their homes. So we operated the community center, which is the Westwood Community Center, up until about 1998, when it became pretty clear that we needed to expand. So we formed a committee. Jan helped form a committee which actually looked at getting a bond issue to expand the community center. And that bond issue was successful in about, I think it was 1999 or 2000. And then the money became available later on in the early 2000s, and the construction was completed in 2007. As part of doing that, the city told SWIC, Southwest Improvement Council, that's our acronym, SWIC, that we would be able to buy the building at some point if we maintained it and continued to manage it in a responsible way. And that was written into a contract, an agreement in 2010, in which the option to purchase the building could be exercised in 2012. So we operated the building until 2012, at which point Jan told the city she wanted to buy it, and the city basically said nothing. They didn't even respond. So we've been here on a month-to-month lease since 2012.
Wait a minute. See, um, Larry, you're basically telling the story of a slumlord. You're telling the slumlord story,
Did I say
Larry.
that, or I'm glad you said that. I did.
Listen, I just call it how I see it. I just call it straight down the line, and I've been around since Moby Dick was a guppy and the Dead Sea was sick. So I've seen so many different things, and it's so funny watching newer generations run the same old playbook, but having a different face on, the status quo. But what you have just described is the actual slumlord model. And now what they've been doing is they dangled a carrot in front of you saying, well, I know the neighborhood's a little rough. I know there's little pigeons in the building. I know nobody wants to go around there. We don't pick up the trash. You're in that kind of neighborhood. But if you can take care of it, because nobody can. And by the way, I heard you say, and the church gave it to us.
That's right.
Like,
You got that right.
the faith community gave Pharaoh a building and bless the church's heart. Anytime you get into business with Pharaoh, Pharaoh has a whole different agenda. And so here's the city, and they say, well, just take care of it. And you're really just holding it while they have these 20-year, these 30-year plans to what we call gentrify, or other folks just call colonize, or economic warfare or class warfare against working class and struggling communities, and even communities that just want to be left alone. Now all of a sudden the city starts showing up with these fancy folks just came up out the college talking about we here to hear from the community, and they got their flip charts and their plans, and they're trying to make you a little bit better. And at the end of the day, those folks who came in to help you have all your stuff, and you are on a month-to-month lease. I'm sorry, Larry. Sorry.
8 years on a month-to-month lease. And in the meantime, somewhere in 2014, see, this is all under what's called the Division of Real Estate, which is, that's who the landlord is. So the Division of Real Estate sends Jan a letter in 2014 saying, just wait a little longer, because we're going to divide the property. That's what's holding this up. As soon as we can divide off the northern part of the property, you'll be able to buy it. So there was a little carrot waved again, keeping us dangling there. The other thing to know is that the lease option, so the contract that was signed in 2010 was entitled Lease with Option to Purchase, and it was actually approved by City Council. The fine print in that contract said, you can buy this building 2 years from now if we decide to sell it to you. Just in the fine print, So it really was kind of an illusory contract to begin with. Nonetheless, when I came on board 2.5 years ago, my top priority was to try to negotiate. We kind of gave up on the idea that we could buy it. At least they could give us a long-term lease. Let us stay here as long as we're doing God's work. Let us stay here as long as we're valuable to the community.
Well,
At some point, we might not be, but how about 5, 7 years, 10 years?
Well, hold on a second, Larry. I've got a couple questions that I want to ask you, because you're discovering something about the Mile High Income City, and it's insidious to the core. It's not fair. It's It's on behalf of the big people and the big money and the developers and the contractors and the inside trading and the concrete that gets poured, but it's the wrong concrete in the front of an airport that gets redone to protect the public from getting shot by snipers, and then they redo it to have it more space for more snipers to snipe at us that we'll never get paid for in our lifetime. And the sad part about this is that ordinary people are in the wake. And when I think of your neighborhood, SouthWest, that whole area, I understand this is the second fastest gentrifying neighborhood in the United States of America. Is that true? And what does that look like?
Well, 3/4 of Denver has been gentrified pretty drastically over the last 10 years. The other 3/4, this particular 1/4 quadrant, is the most vulnerable now. They've pretty much done what they're going to do to the rest of the city, but we're sitting here like sitting ducks, So there was a study done last year. Only San Francisco is gentrifying faster than this part of Denver in general, and then this part of Denver is already beginning the process of gentrification. We're a stabilizing factor in trying to keep people in their homes.
Wow. That being said, who's fighting like hell on your behalf? Like who's in the system saying, not in my neighborhood, you're not going to do this to our community? Like, how's your council who are the fighters? Like, who are the ones that are coming in and they're looking and they're saying these big folks are not going to take advantage of these little folks, and we're going to stand up for our elders, and we're going to stand up for, the most vulnerable, and we're going to fix these streets and we're going to pave them, and it's going to be done on behalf of the people who are there, as opposed to being shiny trinkets for all that want to come? Who's there fighting on behalf of SWIC so we can get behind them?
Well, it's a pretty short list. Don't even get out your pencil. Look, nobody knew about this. When I came in, as I said, it had been 6 years of month to month. I have a very excellent board of directors who's very community oriented, and a lot of members of the community on the board. Everybody said, look, let's just get the mayor out here and talk to him. He was running for re-election. Let's have him come to the center a couple of times, tell him we need a lease. He did. He came. I talked to the mayor, and he said, this is unacceptable. How long you been without a lease? This is unacceptable. I said at that time, I said about 7 years. He said, we got to do something about that. Well, he did. He said, you got till the end of 2021. That was a year ago. So in the meantime, we've tried to talk to Jamie Torres about this, our councilwoman. We have talked to the mayor's office. We've been sent back to the real estate division. Lisa Lumley is the landlady. That's who we started with. Then we went to the mayor. Mayor sent it back to Lisa Lumley. Jamie said there's nothing she can do because it's the mayor. It's the mayor's office. We pointed out that this is her district and her community center, and that certainly there's something that she could do. She said, well, she's going to do a process to decide what should happen from here on out. That's the other thing, Brother Jeff. They've not said what they're going to do. I mean, there's no alternative to what they're going to do here. It's just, you got to leave and then we'll decide. So she's going to start a process, she said, in mid-2021. And maybe it'll sit empty for a while, but we can move back in if the community decides. If the community decides that we should move back in, we can. I pointed out to her that just is not realistic. We're not going to move back in. If we move out, we got to find a place. We got to continue our mission and serving people. We'll find a place if we have to. But at this point, Brother Jeff, we don't have anybody on the inside that's really fighting for us. I think this is the first time we've actually gone public with what's happening. We spent a year trying to talk, face to face, rational, reasonable talk to get them to do something that's the right thing. Hasn't happened.
Larry, I mean, it's fascinating. You're getting swept, bro. This is the city of sweeps. You're getting swept. That's what they're doing. They're sweeping you, and they're telling you you can go somewhere, and maybe you could get back. It might sit empty. It's heartbreaking because you've been there for, I don't know, 33 years. 33 years, and I always have these questions about the Mile High Income City, like, who is the city? Like, is it a thing? Like, is the city a thing over there with the landlord, the real estate division on high, and then you've got to go and say, oh, please, the city, might we have a place to stay? And then you've got the mayor. I'm pretty sure he gave you your best. Like, he'll give you that best minister kind of thing. Larry, I'm going to drop some wisdom on you. Now, listen, you got to be real careful with the blacks, particularly the blacks when they get into leadership, because most of them are going to always come to you in the name of God. Like they come in, this unacceptable. This unacceptable. They look at you like, how long you been without a lease? Like, this unacceptable. And you're like, you think you're getting some compassion. You're like, oh, I'm talking to a human. Like, you understand, we've been here for 33 years. We got behind your campaign. You were here before. It's just, we're only going through this because you didn't know. And you're like, this unacceptable. Larry, here's my card. Call me direct. Just let me know, because this unacceptable. Next thing we gonna do something. We gonna do something about it. Not knowing they're doing something to you, you get an eviction notice, and then you have a council person with the nerve to say, I'm elected, I'm in power. I can't do nothing. Larry, I can't do nothing. Do you hear how ignorant this sounds? Because when power tells you what they can't do, what they're really telling you is what they're not going to do for you. They got another plan, and it sounds ridiculous. It is ridiculous, but here's something that just makes me go wild when our seniors get taken advantage of, especially by, these generations that are on the backs of seniors. These seniors have built this city. They've worked in these positions. They've done everything to get you to where you're at. And then when you get there, you come and kick them. Talk to me about what's going to happen with the seniors in that community who are being displaced throughout this city everywhere. How are the seniors holding up in your community?
Well, it's been pretty rough on them. The COVID is just isolated them even more than all of us have been isolated. They just can't go out. They depended on this particular place as for socialization. We keep them fed. We're providing meals like we did daily meals here, and we keep those going. They bring us 5 frozen meals a week, and we distribute those. We take them to their homes, and then we do food pantry. Our food pantry has gone from 40 to 50 people to about 250 families every other week. We have 250 total, about 100 average every week. So, I think it's a major problem. We're funded in a large part by Denver Regional Council of Governments. It's called the Area Agency on Aging. And all of our agencies who deal with seniors are trying to figure out ways to get people to be able to communicate. We'd love to be able to give them tablets so that they can communicate with each other. but they can't come in the center, so it's been a real disadvantage. One of the things I just want to tell you about Jamie and the conversation, you brought it up. She said, well, it's not like I don't understand that, seniors are important, but, we got youth violence. Maybe the center should be about youth violence. And I said, it's not a question of either or. These are both really important. Let's talk about that. Maybe we can do more with youth violence. There's certainly more that SWIC can do in the community. We're not perfect. We can always get better and do more. But don't punish us for being successful. That's what they're doing. I mean, one of the things that came out in when we released this information that we have to leave is, maybe these community centers need to be more community oriented. We need to, and Jamie too, is this, we should have a process to decide what the community wants. Well, I can tell you that if the community wanted a bunch of different things to come in here, what would happen? There'd have to be an organization to run this place. And what are they going to do? They're going to form a nonprofit. And then what has to happen? They have to form a board, and they have to raise money, and they have to be able to pay the bills. All the things that we've been doing for 33 years, why get rid of us to replace us with what? Something that they don't even know yet. And, anyway.
But no, that's what
terribly frustrating.
That's what gentrification is. It's get rid of what's there and make it pleasing for what can come. And they use folks that are from these neighborhoods to pull the trigger and say things like, oh, just charge it to my heart and not my head. All that. They play you just like a fiddle, but they've got a plan. They've already signed a deal with whoever they want to have that property because the value has gone up so much that they are attempting to squeeze as much as they can for themselves. And then when they leave these positions, they become consultants or they work for contractors or they work for construction companies. Our city somehow has become nothing more than a transactional stepping stone to folks who are aspirational about their next paycheck. And I can say it. I know, a lot of folks don't like to say it, but this city has lost the sense of community a long time ago. When you think about, that Westwood Recreation Center or community center, every neighborhood had a community center that was dedicated and run by and for the community. Right across the alley from Brother Jeff's Cultural Center was the 5 Points Community Center. It's exactly like the center that you have. It was community controlled. It was community run. And then all of a sudden, when you started having this black and brown leadership and you started having this trickle effect of now the city's going to become something else, the city started putting community out saying, this is going to be our office. This is going to be our space. This is going to be where we're going to get your driver's licenses. This is where we're going to occupy the space. And we've had those fights all the way with Mr. Houston, going back to 5 Points Community Center. We've been displaced from ours 15 or 18 years ago. I'm just surprised that you all were able to hold on to what you had for as long as you have been able to, but they pulled the rug from up under us. And, this goes all the way back to, black and brown leadership. And so each one of them would say, it doesn't have anything to do with me. When I was around, we was blackety black and brownity brown, but they were just passing the baton to get us to where we're at now. Is there anything that we can do, Larry, to stop this eviction and have them honor the community's equity in that community and sell the building to the community in the same way Denver Housing Authority has been selling all of our property to private developers? What can be done from here?
Wouldn't that be nice? Well, you already started. Thank you for having me on, because telling the story is is a big part of letting people know that it's happening. I mean, like I say, we did this very quietly, trying to negotiate, and now we're telling the story. We did, they sent us a lease a year ago, and we tried to get a few changes. One of the terms of the lease was that I have to report every 3 months in great detail every little thing I'm doing. Every dollar comes in, every dollar goes out. I only got till the end of this year to stay here, but I got to report every 3 months. We tried to change that. They wouldn't even change that. So we did sign the lease in December that gives us to the end of 2021. The lease will come before City Council sometime in January for approval. We're not asking City Council not to approve it, but we are going to ask City Council to tell the mayor and I'm not going to say lovely Lisa Lumley, Miss Lisa Lumley, to extend our lease, or to be willing to sell us the building as you suggested, like they originally promised they would do. And secondly, to be transparent. I think you hit on something here. They have signed a deal or they know what they want to do. I don't really believe that Jamie Torres knows what's really going on with the executive branch, and City Council should know if there is something going on. But this whole idea of transparency and accountability is something that people can demand and that we're demanding too. So that's a lot if we can get that done, and then we'll find out.
Well, one of the things that I would recommend, and we'll stay on this. I'm watching several things right now. I'm watching the shenanigans with the Park Hill golf course.
Yes.
Where I've got a $2 million investment over there, and I understand it only means that I could have a tea time. But I'm like, I'm into this conservation easement study now, so I'm getting my conservation easement chops
as long as they have a planning process going. They've developed this planning process. Forget about the easement. They've already said, when the community comes in with a plan, then the easement goes away. So that's the trick here. We just went through this over at Loretto Heights with the same outfit. So you can ask me about that too. I've got a lot of information.
Hold on. What am I to expect? Because I've got a lot of goodwill. And Dr. Lisa Calderon says, like, I get caught up in this cycle of hopefulness, and it's like you get victimized, you get beaten, then they say, I'm sorry. And then you come right back and say it's not going to happen again. And so I'm back at the desk.
And then they squeeze you even harder.
They hit you again. And I'm like, here comes the next planning group. And they got these fancy names and these great cards and, all of this stuff. Can you tell me what happened at Loretto Heights and what can I expect in Park Hill?
You want to do that on a different program? You want to do it now?
Well, why don't you tell me a little bit now of what to expect? Because I'm going to tell you what to expect on your end, because we went through what we see that it's back and forth. We got our community center took many years ago. They're after yours. And now, it's all this stuff is moving parts, but as it relates to an easement and partnership and all that stuff, what should I be paying attention to? What should I expect?
Well, what they do is they have a steering committee that's set up under the planning office with the members being handpicked with the input of the developer. And the people on the committee will be presented with plans that are basically, do you want light blue or dark blue? Do you want a grid system, or do you want circles? Or how about a combination? Wouldn't that work? And everybody goes, yeah. So then they come up with this plan, which is a multi-use, you've got your little bit of open space over here and over here, and actually it exceeds the amount of open space which we're required to give you. The developer's being very generous, the city's being very generous. It's actually 25% instead of 17%. So everybody goes, all right, this is it. We've come up with this we've got affordable housing, we've got grocery stores, We've got open space, and there it is. The community has approved of it. So go away, easement.
Oh, and you said a key word because everybody talks about grocery store. It's like when you say grocery store, that's kind of like saying water to fish.
Manna from heaven.
That's manna for heaven. And you're going to get that. Oh, you want a grocery? Because you haven't had good food. The good food is over there. We're going to bring it over here. Oh, my
All the
God.
things that the community wants. Everybody's going to rubber stamp the things the community wants. I mean, you might have a few people saying, we need more open space, but the majority of the, well, they never even actually take a vote. There was never a vote taken. It's kind of like touchy-feely. The councilman says, yeah, that's what I want. And so it's once the process gets going, it's the easement is just immaterial. City council is going to do away with it for the plan.
Well, I could tell you there's a couple there's some fine folks, and I would say all of them. I mean, I don't know, like I used to give folks the benefit of the doubt, but now I don't. Politicians who get elected and they're in positions of power, if they're not prepared and they're not doing what they know how to do and need to do, sometimes they'll feign ignorance. Like, there's nothing I can do. Like, there's nothing I can do. And they'll give you those eyes like Larry's. There's nothing like I feel like I feel like it's like there's nothing I could do while they turning that knife in your back, And I would recommend I really like Candy C. DeBaca. She's gonna watch it to the very end. Candy C. DeBaca is gonna make sure
yes,
the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted. I like Paul Cashman. I don't know Paul Cashman. He'll call it down the middle. He seems real fair to me. You might not like his decision sometime, but you know where he's coming from. And so I think if you talk to Paul Cashman, you're going to be able to get at least a good feel of what's happening. This city council, they feign real ignorant around their power and their relationship to the mayor. And they yield everything to, more often than not, the mayor. We elected you, but we got to hear from the mayor. The mayor. And half of them, they waiting to run for mayor. So they don't want to upset what's happening in terms of this city. They're going to come to us and say, gentrification's bad and everyone should be able to live here and livable wage and campaign finance reform and I grew up here and this is my sexual orientation and this is my gender and this is my skin tone and this is my height and this is my color eyes, and they're going to hit you with acronyms, BIPOC.
You got it down. You got it down.
BIPOC and Tupac and Ice Cube and Biggie. They're going to hit you with all of that. And then if you say something wrong, the wrong acronym, they're going to make it seem like you don't know what's going on. And the next thing you know, they're going to get caked up by the folks who run this city and have made sure everything is in order. And they're going to kick the little people and they're going to say, you know what? There's nothing we could do about folks in tents. There's nothing we could do about folks that are freezing to death. There's nothing we can do about, folks that are dealing with frostbite. And there's nothing we could do about any of that. They just need to go inside to a shelter, into shelters that none of them would even go into. They wouldn't go into they wouldn't do any of that. And they'll have a big fund that's set aside for lawsuits, and all the while saying you need to take care of the young folks because there's a gang problem or there's youth violence. All of those are code words for we're about to gentrify this joint out, and don't worry about that. We're getting rid of that, and we're selling this property, and we're going to build it up.
Brother Jeff, I go back to the McNichols city councils, and there hasn't been a city council in many years that formed a coalition back in the day, about 78, 79, 80s. The truly, I'm not going to say liberal because we have a liberal city council. The truly progressives on the council formed a coalition, included Bill Roberts, Kathy Donahue. They needed 7 votes to have the power to do something about the mayor getting everything he wanted. They recognized their role as the legislative branch, not just colleagues of the executive branch, but they actually formed a coalition, and it took 3 or 4 years for them to get to 7 votes. And then there was some swing votes. Those 2 votes they needed to override vetoes would join them sometimes when they needed it. And that was a functioning, really got a lot done under those city councils. And we haven't had that in 20, 25 years here in Denver. And so that's a key to this, is to getting council to recognize their own role. They are not a branch of the executive. They are the legislative, a check and balance, and the city employees are not their colleagues. The city employees are not their colleagues. They work for the city, and they are there to provide oversight. That consciousness has to change.
Wow. Well, I'll tell you all, free thinkers out there, it's heartbreaking. Just another example of what it means to be a big, bold, expensive city. And wouldn't you know, nature would come along and hit us with COVID and level that playing field and make everyone realize what it means to miss meals, decide if you could pay that high, sky-high mortgage and that high, sky-high lease. And you got all these folks with these businesses that had all the jingles and the bells and the swipes and the, all of the foo-foo and fam-fam. And then all of a sudden the same folks that brought you here said, you're not essential and we're going to close you down. And now you're like, this is unjust. This is so wrong. We're going to have marijuana. We're going to shut it down. And then you have the 24-hour prohibition, because within 24 hours, they was like, no, marijuana is essential. It's like essential, but we're going to shut your restaurant down, and we're going to shut this down, and we're going to shut that down. And then the politics start playing out, and folks are watching all of this while those who tell us what to do get on a plane and head to Mississippi and then come back and say, oh, charge it to my head and not my heart, or heart, not my head. But before that, the apology was, shoot, well, if you got some problems with it, like if you hurt, I'm apologizing for you, like not me. And I'm like, people are just disgusted with this. And while at the same time, you've got an organization, SouthWest Improvement Council, that has been running and taking care of seniors for over 33 years and our most vulnerable citizens in these neighborhoods. And then you have a council person that says, why don't you just change your mission? Like, why don't you stop doing that and do this? And we'll consider, that, because, these are the priorities now. It becomes very disgusting. So I'm going to read a little something from some information I have. And it says, during the term of Mayor Michael Hancock, Denver has had the largest share of its vulnerable neighborhoods that gentrified than all other cities in the United States but San Francisco. And now it seems he has no qualms in expelling one of the city's oldest human service nonprofit organizations, the SouthWest Improvement Council, serving mostly what? Latino, Native American, Asian American elders from the city building, which it has successfully operated at for over 33 years. Now, you got to remember, all these politicians are going to run out talking about BIPOC. They go, BIPOC. We need to do something for the BIPOC community, Black, Indigenous, people of color. But if you're really serious about the BIPOC community, why aren't you all out there making sure that the SouthWest Improvement Council doesn't have a lease, but gets from up under the slumlord, i.e. the Mile High City leadership and the real estate division, and give a community ownership of land, ownership of property, Like many of us have decided we got to own our property because we don't want you coming in our door. We don't want to sign your paperwork. We don't want to see you. Just tell us when them inspections are due, when you want that backflow taken care of, when you want to send the folks that come in and do an inspection and charge you $25 and all of that stuff. Just do that and leave us alone. Why don't you deal with self-empowerment in these communities and give up the land and property that's owned by the people and not the city? Because I thought we were the city. Am I wrong? Larry, am I wrong? Are we not
Yes, sir.
the city?
Should be. That's, I mean, I've spent most of my life fighting for exactly that kind of consciousness that, we have representative government, but they only become representative every 4 years. Now, there's some of them, like you mentioned, that are really truly trying to do their job as it should be done. But it isn't just at election time that they're representative, and they need to listen to the people. And part of the problem stems from the fact that we have nonpartisan government. I'm not against nonpartisan government, but you got to remember you don't have the political parties that have any influence whatsoever over these elected officials, because they don't go through a process to get elected through the parties. And the parties are more concerned with state and national politics. And most people don't pay attention to local politics first. So the fact that it's nonpartisan leaves kind of a void. And your voice is very important. The more we get people to think about these things and talk about these things, get involved in issues like we got involved with City Park and the golf course, or the Park Hill golf course, or the zoo when they were feeding recycled water to the animals. I mean,
and then killed the geese.
Animals.
They killed the geese and fed it to the unhoused neighbors. Geese, yeah. They gave the geese meat.
The more people can pay attention to these local issues, maybe we can make a difference.
Well, we can, and we are, and there are so many people, and a lot of them are these free thinkers. We're all backgrounds, all sides of the political spectrum. We don't have groupthink. We just call it as we see it and let it land where it is. But this is a perfect example of those of you who are studying gentrification, and those of you who keep talking about what can be done. Well, the way gentrification works is we're going to get you out the building and maybe you could get back. maybe you could get back. Doesn't that sound like the Hope 6 project? Like I said, once they started talking about Hope 6, I'm like, all that means is I hope 6 of y'all be able to get back into some housing after they shut down these what they call the projects, or what they call government housing or subsidized housing. Why don't we go back and look at how those promises played out? Because right now you had DHA selling off your property to private developers, but you can't sell a property to SWIC, who has been doing the work for 33 years. The work that you all say that you want done, and the work that most of you all say you're doing from these various offices, they can't have a building.
It's the work the city really, I'm not saying they should be doing, but they're not doing it. That's why we formed this partnership. It's a partnership with the city to provide these services. I mean, they're actually dissolving a working partnership.
And what you have to really think about is they're dissolving it on behalf of whom and what?
That we don't know.
And
what
well, we know.
We need to find
I guarantee you, it's going to be the developers. It's going to be the ones that issued a contract and then they raised the contract several million so they could put a boardroom inside of a particular building. And that's the way you run game on folks that are either puppets, bot, or ignorant. And I don't care which one it is, because the outcome is the same. We're going to take advantage of all of the resources, and we're going to have people who are running that will not hold us accountable. And we're going to pay a volunteer school board nothing, and we're going to pay the executive of the school board $26,000 a month. It's going to make just a little less than the president of the United States of America. on public dollars while everybody sits around and looks like nothing. But there's nothing I could do, Larry. Maybe if you just move out, I'll pull some strings and maybe I could get you back in. Why don't you pull them strings before we get put out? I don't know.
Well, we've got about a month here to maybe change the outcome. I'm not, pessimistic, but if the past is any indication of the future, we're gonna still need the community's help, and we're not going to quit providing these services. Somehow we're going to survive, and hopefully it'll be here. But if we don't, we're just going to need the community services, the community support, no matter what we have to do.
Well, one thing I do know, Larry, is good people always rise up and they take on the good fight. And the problem that we've had in black and brown communities has been the system has figured out a way to use black and brown people, native people, indigenous people to do their bidding. And it makes it very difficult to speak truth to power or to have a critical analysis because folks will be saying things like, you just mad because you can't say that. That's a black man. You can't say that. That's a gay woman. You can't say that because that's a brown. I'm going to say whatever I want to say. I'm going to exercise my constitutional right and my common sense to know that people in power are taking advantage of little people. And I believe the seniors should be stood up for. I believe people who have been kicked and the folks that have had their blood, equity, sweat, and tears as equity should also be a part of a growing and a developing economy. And for those who get elected and forget that because they want to, have a new position or they want to wear a lapel pin or they want to stand in front of you and say, that's unacceptable. A month-to-month lease. The reason the mayor knew about a month-to-month lease is because he knows about slumlords. Because you don't grow up in poverty and not know what a slumlord is. And then you grow up and you get in power and you become a slumlord. And you say the same thing slumlords say. That's unacceptable. Well, if you just pay 1 or 2 more months, I'm going to sell it to you. I'm going to get it to you. I'm going to give it to you. And they're not going to do it. They are just basically petty, wannabe capitalists thinking that they got big money and they only get 11 pieces of silver. We got to make sure that you all stay in that building. That's where I'm at right now.
The public deserves to know what the plan is here. What are they really doing and why they aren't being transparent. I went to the auditor, Tim O'Brien, and asked him to try to find out because, the auditors check and balance against the executive. And they wouldn't tell him. He came back and said, I'm sorry, I hate to tell you this, I can't find out.
See, now we got to ask Tim, is that I can't or I won't? Or
I believe that he really couldn't.
No, I mean, listen,
nobody.
As someone knows, I bet you I could tell you an auditor that could. Dennis audit the hell out of everybody Gallagher. He'll go look. And I'm not saying Tim is not a good guy, is not doing a great job, and I'm pretty sure he is because he's going to go and figure out where the money's going for these sweeps. He's about to figure out what's happening with the sweeps and how much money is being spent to displace folks and take their belongings and all that. So I have faith in Tim. He's on the case, and the auditor's office is supposed to be a check and a balance. But this city operates like everything goes through and to the mayor. And we got to stop that. Needs to be some accountability.
Well, when the next election comes up, how the powers that be choose who the anointed one is should be a focus of attention.
Yeah, and you always listen to folks who say what they can and they can't do. Can't only means what I'm not going to do because power don't have can and can't. Power moves in the direction that it is either programmed to move in or wants to move in. And I believe that it should be known and transparent what's going on. We saw Albus Brooks running those games with the City Park golf course when they was telling us, we're going to protect you from 100-year flood. Because 100-year flood. And they tore down the city fathers' trees that they gave to the future. Right. They gave those trees which give life. to the future. And here you have a new generation that comes up and says, I's got to tear down the trees for 100-year flood, while they was pimping a highway with the federal government to come through the neighborhood. And that's what you have in a lot of this current ideology in terms of leadership. They can find them, they can scout them out, and they can run those lines. We just want answers. And it's up to an informed citizenry to make sure they get those answers. And anyone who tells you that they can't do something, you tell them to quit or go away so we can find someone who can do it.
To be fair, part of this lies in the charter and the strong mayor form of government. That's something else that needs to be looked at, is what kind of charter changes can we make that gives city council more power, that creates a more balanced government system. We don't want a city manager form of government, but we do want something that can't be abused. The problem is that when you get certain individuals become the mayor and they can abuse the system, you want something that legal in the charter that creates a system that's more balanced. And part of it, the auditor, for example, doesn't really have the kind of power to force the mayor to give him any information or do anything or to even change. He just did an audit, for example, of the real estate division, of Miss Lumley in particular. I mean, it was not pretty. It was not pretty. But did anything happen? No.
But if we
Parks and Rec, same things. So the way the power is allocated and where authority is in the city needs to really be examined. And all of us have that responsibility to do that as well.
Well, we need to have the type of power that if we are experiencing or seeing something that's wrong, we could put a boot on it, and then we can raise the price of the penalty from $50 to $100, and then we could sell it at an auction. Like we know what power does to us, but what you pointed out is what's called lack of accountability. In other words, I can do wrong, and even if it's not wrong, it's kind of gray because power makes sure that they don't get caught up in right and wrong. It's like, well, I can't really call it. I mean, it feels that it's kind of squishy. You know what I mean? And so even with the charter being as it is, when you have leadership that has integrity, the fortitude, and the fight for the average person, it doesn't matter what that charter says. That power would say a month-to-month lease is unacceptable. That's what power said. So power knows it's unacceptable and do something about it. There is nothing that says that you can't go into the real estate division and talk to that whole crew that probably got shipped in from parts unknown, just came out of college, talking about they in power and looking at these little things and having great influence on ordinary people's lives who have been here forever. You can't tell me that somebody can't step up and say something can be done about this because it's the right thing to do. That's the type of leadership
I think you're right. Integrity and accountability go together.
Yes.
I'm about to run out of power on my machine, so if I suddenly leave you, don't think it's intentional.
Well, I'll tell you, it's been great talking to you. We'll stay in touch. We'll stay on top of this. But the story for today, everybody, is and is this a true statement? The mayor is ousting a nonprofit that has been serving the community and seniors for 33 years, and those seniors have been dependent on food, clothing, shelter, a safe place. They are Latino, Native American, Asian American, and they've been successfully
all races.
All of the different races, but particularly that is a heavy concentration of individuals. And after 33 years, you're being asked to leave, and there's no plan about what's going to be done once you're gone. It's just like, it's time to go.
That's right. You got it. Thank you so much.
All right, Larry. I appreciate you. Again, we will stay on it and, keep up the fight. And I just assure you that there are a lot of great people of all backgrounds and all positions of power that are on top of this.
I'm available anytime. My email is larryswick@gmail.com if anybody's interested in helping. And our we have a Facebook page. You can just look up SWIC. Just type in Denver SWIC, and you'll get our website. And my phone number here at SWIC is 303-934-2268. But thank you again. Really appreciate you letting people know about what's happening to us.
All right, we will definitely be in touch, and it's powerful. It's